in a positive way. It's Australia Day as well, but yeah, it's pretty amazing to watch this, because for me, when I next time I went to Les Sables d'Olonne was to actually watch you finish, Conrad, and that was pretty tough for me to do. But 10 months later, when I ended up in Les Sables d'Olonne, the reception was probably better for me personally, given everything we went through. So yeah, lots of emotions. This whole race is about emotions, particularly for me, and I guess for you guys as well.
Yeah, definitely. And Mike, I mean, obviously 2004-5, you were sneaking across the line without a keel, but you've had so many finishes in this race. It's been a remarkable one to follow from the sidelines. Probably one of the best ever. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's kind of strange because obviously this was a race that started with some pretty strong favourites and some well-evolved teams. I'm obviously thinking particularly of Chiral and Hugo Boss, and there's no question that those two boats could have potentially won the race. But what we were left with was a really competitive, very compelling group of people that made a fantastic race. And the net result is, even here watching a PBR cross the finish line, we're still not 100% certain who's going to actually be the winner of the Vendée Globe. I mean, it's fantastic for Charlie. He has sailed an amazing race, very controlled, very modulated throughout the whole event, and thoroughly deserves the luxury of arriving in first place. But it's by no means certain that he'll hang on to that first place, because of course you've got the time allowances of Boris at 6 hours and Yannick at 10 hours 15. So now the minute he has crossed the line, the clock will start running, and the Apivia team will start sweating and watching very closely the arrivals of the subsequent boats. I mean, I have actually been in this situation on the challenge. When I finished the challenge in the British Steel Challenge, we were the winners, but because it was done on a lapse time, we had to sit there and wait for the second boat to come in to know whether or not we'd won. And we all were convinced we'd won, and actually we got bumped back into second place. It's pretty hard, for Charlie, having sailed a fantastic race, for the team having done an amazing job. They're now going to have to sweat the next 6 hours and then potentially 10 hours 15, and to know whether or not they'll hold the top spot in the Vendée Globe.
Yeah, it's interesting. Earlier today, I was chatting to Nick, and Damien Seguin did a little piece to camera a few days ago. There he is, sort of explaining his kind of thoughts.
Des fois, on peut employer des mots qui traduisent pas exactement notre pensée. Mais voilà, on est des sportifs de haut niveau. On se bat tous les jours pour essayer d'avoir le meilleur résultat possible. Et à ce titre-là, on vit une arrivée de Vendée Globe qui est assez incroyable.
I mean, in effect, what he was saying at the time was, it's tough. They feel like they've all sailed the race of their lives, and yet, the result is somewhat going to change because of this, this rescue. And I think he felt probably misquoted, perhaps, by the French media. So he's sort of just trying to justify that, actually, they're all, so passionate about finishing this race. It seems hard that they're kind of, their results on the water are going to change, ultimately because of the rescue. But I think we all agree that the rescues do need to be rewarded, in some ways, to encourage that to continue and happen.
I think the reality is, Conrad, you have to accept that there was time lost by those boats that went to the rescue of Kevin Escoffier, and that's real. It's just because it's a few months ago. It's a month ago now, or 6 weeks ago now, doesn't make it any less real. It really did affect their race. So I think, as well as it being the right thing for committees to do. I think we also have to accept that the reality is that their race was affected by the need to go to another boat's assistance, and if they ultimately it moves them up the podium, well, I think that it's fair and right and proper.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. So we're just seeing pictures. It looks like he's crossed the line. Some the scrutineers are probably are getting on board.
And 6:30 this big Wednesday.
Well, hello everybody, it's Alex here on Hugo Boss. We're well across the equator.
Boats are now going out to meet Charlie Dalin, who should cross the finish in round about 90 minutes time. The first boat to finish.
It looks like the scrutineers have
thereafter the clock
gone on
starts
board.
ticking. We're waiting for the second and third place boats for Boris Herman and Louis Burton. And at the moment it's really in between the two. It could go down to the absolute wire. Just now then Louis Burton is around about 1 hour behind.
Kill that one. Go back to this one. So yeah, he's finished. Scrutineers on the boat. What do you remember of that moment, Mike? You know, it's just kind of a strange time, isn't it? They're sort of checking the boat, making sure.
It was slightly bizarre. It was slightly bizarre because obviously I came in much earlier than predicted, but obviously all the scrutineers came on board. Went down and checked things like the keel seals, which I thought was kind of funny because there wasn't a keel. But no, I mean it's a strange moment. You go from what you've got used to over the last 3 months of being on your own and dealing with the issues of the boat, and suddenly your shore team jump on board, everything's taken over. And you're suddenly surrounded with the kind of conventions of finishing a major yacht race like this. This is going to be slightly strange because I'm sure the restrictions in France, the coronavirus restrictions, will somewhat limit the reception that he'll get in Le Sable d'Olonne. But, you know, for him personally, I think this is an enormous moment. He realizes, you know, a young guy like him, he's going to realize he's got a massive potential career ahead of him, regardless of the final outcome. He's finished the Vendée Globe in first place, and I think he'll take a lot from that. And you know, I think Charlie Dalin is a name we're likely to see again in the future, no doubt about it.
Yeah, definitely. So just sort of looking, you know, back over this last week, Nick. You know, they've been sailing with the intensity of a Figaro race. You know, just keeping that pressure on the whole time. You know, 80 days into the race, and just an extraordinary moment, really. I think this last week must have been so tough for them all, psychologically, mentally, physically.
Yeah, I think the combination of being so close and worrying about what could happen between any period really north of the equator, or even once you've rounded Cape Horn, you just start focusing on the finish, or I did anyway, and worrying about what could happen that could perhaps, you know, restrict your ability to finish. And but at that point, you are so fluent with the boat, you're so used to the company that you have around you in terms of competition. And I think right now, you know, you will look at some of the figurists and think, okay, these guys now switch into that mode. And these guys are very well trained and rehearsed to be in that mode. So I think they would have quite enjoyed it. I couldn't believe some of the images from the Southern Ocean, particularly from Boris, where, you know, there was 4 or 5 boats in sight and, you know, mid-Indian. And I'm like, this is outrageous. When I was every Southern Ocean passage I've done, I've felt so heavily isolated.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it has been neck and neck. And I think personally, I would have loved that. I would have loved that close combat type scenario where you feel like you've got company, because in the event of any incident, as we saw with Kevin Escoffier, the closer your opponents are to you, the more chance you have of getting through any difficult situation. But then also having the fight, being reminded of the fight all the time. when you're on your own, it's too easy just to sort of back off. And I think these guys would have loved these last few days.
Yeah.
It is a little sad to see, Charlie not being able to just punch the sky and know that's it. We've seen that so often in the Vendée Globe, the elation. I remember when Armel Leclerc finished and won the race, and he was so elated that I can't remember who it was that went on board to interview him, and he just burst into tears.
Yeah.
And for me, I almost cried with him. It was so emotional.
Yeah.
And now here we have a scenario where it's not full elation, but hey, you have to have nothing but enormous self-pride for this particular achievement. It's been incredible.
Yeah, it's very true. And what about yourself, Mike? I mean, you were in a bit more of a scrap coming into these finishes, and certainly in 2005, you were fully immersed in a battle. Were you conscious of being in a race, racing hard for every moment, or was it sort of actually we've still got quite a far distance to go here?
I think we're struggling a bit for bandwidth here.
Can you hear me okay? I think.
All right, you're coming back. Yeah, I mean, personally, I think Charlie should get on and enjoy it like a winner, because, hell, he's done the race. He's finished first. What the rest of it is pure administration. And, he's the first in the Vendée Globe, period. And he can walk away from the race, always knowing that he finished the race first, as will everyone else. And whatever the admin is in the background, or whatever happens over the next 6 hours, that won't change that. He's always got that. He always did that. So, and by the looks of it, he's finished with the boat in good shape, good condition. We know he's trimmed the other foil down a bit, but he sailed a great race, and that team have done a fantastic job, and he should celebrate it like a winner completely.
Yeah, Francois Gabard was on the show today, saying, echoing really that, he said, the rest is kind of out of our hands. There were things that we could have done different, but ultimately, these guys have sailed, fantastic race, and given us all a huge amount of enjoyment following it at the same time. What do you think is going through the mind, Nick, of Yannick and Thomas? Obviously, two great competitors. Yannick's there, probably conscious that he's got a chance of overall, and Thomas, sailing in, knowing that he's probably going to end up finishing fourth in this race.
Yeah, I think from Yannick's perspective, he's just hammered down, absolute 100% hammered down, and he knows how to sail in that mode. So I couldn't imagine the emotional torture that he's experiencing, just knowing, how important every second is from here on in. And they're dealing with a lot right now. They are in shipping lanes. The Bay of Biscay is quite heavily draped with sea mist right now, so the chance of the visibility is low, and the chance of obviously collision or fishing boat activity or whatever is high. So,
yep.
But it's a case of blinkers on. It's like being in the Southern Ocean right now, where that there's ice around, etc. But you've just got to go as hard as you possibly can, with the belief that nothing's going to get in your way. And I think Yannick will be full bit in the teeth right now, and absolutely giving it his all.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's correct. And, there's everything to play for. And both Yannick and Boris, it's been interesting watching some of the maneuvers. It seemed to me that the guys that really pushed north made a cleaner approach to the Sapelon, whereas Charlie actually looked quite nervous coming in the sense that there were jibes there that you kind of wondered why he did that jibe. And I think that that's the pressure of being in the lead that's forcing you to make choices. Maybe his routing was telling him to do that, but I was quite worried for him off the finish there, because I felt he was dicing with an area that doesn't always follow the weather map. And I was kind of worried he was going to find some, fall into some quiet breeze. And some of those jibes, they didn't work out terribly well. Let's put it that way. The hook in the jibe of the track just looked a little too sharp, whereas the boats that went a long way north, like Yannick, have had a much smoother passage, although the routing earlier today was suggesting that they would get in on one jibe. I'm not quite so sure of that. I think that they will have to jibe at the end, and it will get softer as they approach, and there will be a slowdown. And all of that is throwing into the melting pot of will he or won't he move the podium, So It is an extraordinary situation where the podium could actually go any one of a number of ways. And I don't think we've ever seen a Vendée. The 2004 finish was real close between the three of us. We thought that was close, but believe me, this isn't altogether closer. The next boat back from the front three was 1,000 miles back. So whereas, here we've got, 7 or 8 boats all in stone's throw distance from the Sub d'Olonne. And so it is an extraordinary success for the class to have this many boats, this many good sailors so close to such a close finish.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking a few days ago about the the different routes north. I think Charlie was and Boris to some extent were in a bit of a rock and a hard place because of being in always slightly less pressure than the boats coming in behind, with the breeze building, and that's affected their routing. For Boris, he did seem to kind of lose out in a time when he he's got both foils, he's definitely got pretty good speed advantage at times, and I do wonder whether he his routing strategy to sort of kind of follow in that way was the right thing to do. But the one person we haven't perhaps talked about so much is Louis Burton, and kind of if we remind ourselves, in halfway stage he was at the top of his mast off Macquarie Island doing a big repair job, 1,000 miles behind the leaders. What an amazing comeback he's had.
Yeah, there's no question his performance, I thought for a long time, was going to be a winning performance. He could so easily be the first boat to finish this Vendée Globe. He could so easily. It just hasn't quite worked out, but what a race he sailed, and it's kind of a shame. It's kind of a shame that he'll get potentially bumped off the podium by the administration, as I put it. But that's the way it is. But everyone who knows that he sailed a fantastic race and a very clean race, and as he come back from extraordinary difficult circumstances, being 900 odd miles behind.
There's someone here who's obviously followed our broadcast. They've written a comment here. The problem with simply giving back the back time back to the others is who. Let me read that again.
Double-edged sword.
The problem with simply giving time back to others who've helped is a double-edged sword. You don't know if if that hadn't happened, would they've actually been ahead? So tough for them all. I guess that's the reality. But equally, the way Jean Le Cam was sailing, at that time, at that point in the race, I mean, had he not been held back for 15, 16 hours, he could have jumped ahead quite substantially. So it's it's you can't really tell, can we?
I think Louis' video today really summed it up. You know, we're talking a lot about the time deficit and you know, credit for time in terms of rescue, which you know I feel is very warranted and something we can never let go or never question at sea. If somebody needs assistance, we cannot ever for a second contemplate what this will mean to the end result. It just has to default to knowing you're protected from a performance perspective and go to aid. We can't lose that. But Louis' video today, you could just tell he did not care. He did not care if he was in third. He did not care if he was going to finish fifth. He didn't care about the result. He was so elated to be into the Biscay and on his way to the finish. These guys have been at sea for 80 days. And the result's one thing, but the pure achievement is so much greater, I feel personally. And the fact that they'll see their loved ones and their shore team and I guess the stress and the just the enduring will be over soon enough. You know, it's enjoyable to a point for sure, and we all love being out there on our own. But this race takes its toll, and in the next few days they'll be able to sleep.
Yeah. Did you someone was asking on the chat earlier that, you know, I think it was Thomas Ruan's project manager was saying it takes months to recover from this race. For me personally, I kind of drifted straight into an 8-hour sleep, and it didn't really. But then I guess, you know, the intensity of this battle over the last few days is clearly it's going to take time for them to shake it off and recover. I don't know, Mike, did you need a long period to recover after your races?
I don't think I needed a particularly long period. I mean, I was like you. I'm pretty slipped back into a pretty normal routine quite quickly. But I remember Andrea telling me I did try and climb out the window of the hotel in Les Sables in the middle of the night, and she had to sort of restrain me from going out to do a sail change on the 4th floor of the Novotel. But apart from that, no, I did get back into a normal rhythm. But I agree, it does take months to fully come back on tune. And I think by that, what I mean is I sometimes it's physical things and sometimes it's mental. With me, it was more physical things like my muscle memory as my muscle mass decreased after the Vendée Globe, having stopped doing all that work. I got a lot of pains in my arms, and it just took a long time to go away. And things like you always know you've been in the Southern Ocean. You guys will know this. You know, when you've been in the South and in the cold, you know, your nails grow out. There's a line on your nails that grows out, and it takes 6 months for it to grow out the top of your nails, because your nails are kind of a signal of the fact that you're on a strange diet, working in a very cold environment, working very hard, and you get this white bar that moves up your nails for the next 6 months after the race. So yes, it takes months to recover from a Vendée Globe, but it doesn't necessarily take you all that time to stop climbing out the window.
yeah. It reminds me of a time when we were staying in a hotel one night, and Vicky woke me up as I was underneath the boat, underneath the bed, checking the keel.
Yeah. No, that's what they all say.
I actually struggled coming off the Vendée in particular. I had never had a problem with anything transatlantic or any other races around the world with full crew. And but after the Vendée, it took me, I would say, a good 12 months until I felt that I was sleeping comfortably again and really absorbing that I was safe and I was at home and I could rest well. It was bizarre because I never even had a small window of that after effect until that race.
Yeah.
So we've got another message that's come in here. again from Robin, what's more impressive, Louis' recovery from his issues or Charel's monster recovery? Yeah, it must have been a tough race for Jeremy. I think you know, to have gone back, to have made his repairs, and then to just, you know, really sail, you know, a fantastic race, but to have kind of be passing boats, but never really been in the thick of the action. Obviously, Mike, you know, you've been in that circumstance. I had a similar sort of experience during my race, but for you, you know, you went back to the beginning. Did you ever feel like you were, you know, really in the race in that first one?
In 2000, I lost my mast 8 hours after the start of the race and had to go back to Les Sables d'Olonne, and we were not as prepared as modern teams are. We had a mast, but it was in Southampton, so it took us 8 days to put a new rig on the boat, new sails, new rigging, and I set out again. We went out for a test sail and just never came back. Went and did the Vendée Globe, and it was strange, and I didn't feel very motivated. I really can feel for how Jeremy must have been feeling, having gone from a situation just as I did, where I was really in a shot to win the race, with a great boat and good preparation and everything right and so on, and then suddenly something, you know, a tiny component breaks, and that brings an end to it all. So I was very demotivated, and what motivated me to go out there and continue was really watching the shore team and the people around me and their passion to get their boat back out on the water in good shape, you know, and not just the shore team, but also the suppliers, the mast manufacturer, the rigging supplier, the sail makers, you know, all the people that make things work. And once I saw that, it was kind of really no going away from it. But yeah, it's hard, and it's very hard until you start cutting back into the fleet. And Jeremy is now back in amongst the fleet, and we'll be feeling it. We'll be feeling a little more in the competitive action. And I'll tell you something about that race was I always tricked myself into believing I could still win the Vendée Globe, even though I started 8 days behind everyone, because sailing's a strange sport and strange stuff happens. And so I relied on this kind of falsehood that I went through the race with. And one of the worst days in the race for me was the day that Michel Desgiaux finished, because then I knew my imaginary race was over. I mean, I knew it was over in my real head, you know, all the time, but in my kind of imaginary head, the head that motivates me, I used this kind of falsehood to give me the drive to push the boat and go round quickly. And I think I went across the Southern Ocean pretty damn quick, and I think I broke a lot of the records going across the Southern Ocean. You know, the speed records, the Cape to Cape records. But and Jeremy, I think you'll find his time is probably going to be one of the quickest times in this Vendée. So, you know, it's difficult, but I think he did the right thing. I think he did the right thing for him. He certainly did the right thing for his team and for his sponsor. And I don't think he'll ever look back at it and regret the choice to press on, as neither will Sam, who's out there completing her turn around the world. And I'm sure she'll get as good a reception as every other boat, even though she's technically a retiree and outside of the race. Sam Davis will get a great reception, I'm sure.
Yep.
I'd like to add, if I can, you know, Mike, you might not know this. I probably told you actually, but you may not know. I was working with Alan and Kingfisher back in 2000, and I'd broken my leg during the race, which is another story, but I wasn't there for Alan's finish. And you were the first sailor I'd ever seen finish the Vendée Globe and went to your press conference. And I remember you said in another life you were a fireman, you started a fire and you had to put it out. Now, I actually carried that with me when I went back in 05 to do to finish my passage, and that quote stuck with me in my head, and it was pretty powerful for me for sure.
Yeah, no, it's right, isn't it? I mean, it's an unstoppable machine, and you've spent 3 or 4 years getting it started. To switch it off and just say, I'm not doing it anymore, that's hard. That's really hard to do. And you know, the Vendée is it is a strange thing that once you're on it, you feel a compulsion to go through the whole cycle, no matter how painful it is and how much it hurts. You feel this compulsion to complete. And you know, that is what one of the unique things about this race is, the endurance qualities of it drive people to do extraordinary things. And you know, I've been back to the race 4 times, and I did the Around Alone and other races. So you know, I'm obviously a complete masochist. Put myself through all that. But you know, there's something very special about being in the luxurious situation to be able to enjoy your company. And no other person, other than, I can't think of any other person, gets the luxury of truly being in a truly wild place on your own, under your own steam, in your own control. It's a really unusual scenario, and that's what's special about it. And you sometimes don't rationalize that until it's over. Well, during the race, it's all painful and hurts, but when it's over, you think, wow, that was pretty cool.
I think Sam Davis definitely rationalized that. She knew exactly she had to get back out there. And I think about sometimes my own perspective. I loved the race. I didn't enjoy getting to the start. And in fact, when I think about the reasons why, probably I haven't, had another go, in all seriousness, is because, the struggle to get, to find the money, to get a sponsor together and so on. Actually, it was a real relief to get underway. And when I stopped in Cape Town with a broken keel, in all honesty, we were out of money at that point. I would have probably had to have sold the boat in Cape Town. So the only thing left was to kind of just carry on, and at least get the boat back home, and then at least I could sell the boat at the end of the race. But it's it's interesting, that sort of block, of going through all the whole kind of sponsor rejection and all that, pain. Sometimes it, is what probably makes people finish the race. You get that sort of resilience. And for a lot of these guys, I'm not saying it comes on a plate, because it doesn't. The racing is totally different. But in France, it's a much easier pathway perhaps to get to the start line.
I think that's true.
Yeah, and I think if we also consider Sam and what she's doing, and Mike, you did mention that she's bound to get a great reception. One thing that I think we are sadly going to miss is that crazy reception in Les Sables d'Olonne this time, with the unfortunate events of COVID, etc. But for me, when I went back 10 months later with a new keel back to Brazil, and then went to the position I retired and continued on to the finish, we didn't want anyone to know. For us, it was a purely personal thing to do, which is pretty hard for our business, which is all about communicating the race or what we were doing. But we kept it under wraps, and we just went back. And when I arrived in the Sables d'Olonne, I was unbelievably floored by the reception that I received as a non-finisher, but just trying to emotionally complete the circle for not only myself, but everybody in the company, everybody that had worked for us, all of our sponsors, everybody that supported us. It was just the most amazing experience. I've started the America's Cup and all these other events, and nothing comes close.
Yeah. It's it's difficult to comprehend, and I've watched so many of your races, Mike. Every time getting, knowing that there's an opportunity there to just build, the best possible program, but you've still got to go out and sail that race, and it's a magical thing to do.
Just picking up on what Nick was saying about the reception, and when I finished in 2:04, we finished much earlier than was expected because the boat was actually sailing pretty well without a keel, frankly. So I got in at sort of 3 o'clock in the morning, whereas we'd ETA'd 8 o'clock in the morning, because initially I'd slowed down, but then I sped up again. So I got in, I had some sleep, and when I woke up in the hotel, I think before I'd got out the window, but someone had slid a letter under the door of the hotel. And when I opened it, it was from the mayor of Les Sables d'Olonne, and he basically was asking me whether I could go out and come back in again, just so that I could have the full Vendée Globe experience, because he felt I'd been shortchanged by getting in early at 3 o'clock in the morning. And sure enough, with no keel, we did exactly that. We went out, came back in again. So I got to do the canal 2 extra times with the people lining the shore, which is pretty extraordinary. And that really tells you a lot about the people of that part of France and their passion for the Vendée Globe, and the fact that they will do everything to support whoever finishes the Vendée Globe at whatever time.
Brilliant. Well, I think we've been chatting away for about half an hour here, guys. I probably think we should go back to our loved ones and families who probably got the dinner on. I don't know
you've heard my dinner.
We've got a few comments coming in here. Someone here talking about Bruce Schwab's Ocean Planet.
Oh yeah, Ocean Planet, yeah.
Which was in the 2004-5 race, all of our races. So thanks for that, Robin. Great to catch up. I don't know if you'll be up all night watching to see these other guys coming in.
We'll wake up tomorrow morning and it will be what it will be.
Yeah, that's right. But whoever does ultimately win the race, certainly deserves it. But I think you'd probably all agree, all of these guys, have sailed a fantastic race and kept us all enthralled over the last 80 days.
Yeah, brilliant.
And so much more to come. Yeah.
Yeah, great. All right, thanks a lot, guys.
All right, take care. Well done.
We'll see you again soon.
Cheers.
Brilliant. That was great to see Mike and Nick and to relive some old moments there. Congratulations to Charlie. Crossed the line, and of course, we've still got Louis and Boris and Yannick and Damien and Giancarlo and Jean Le Cam, all still piling in over the next 24 hours. Absolute remarkable finish. And they're all absolute heroes. So we look forward to doing this again, maybe in 4 years' time. Cheers. Bye-bye.